Next, Ms. Hanabusa from Hawaii.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd also like to thank the ranking member and yourself for the interest expressed in the COFA issue. Thank you very much on behalf of the people of Hawaii and the other states that are affected by that. Secretary Lipchenko, I would like to clarify how certain items are surviving in the NOAA budget. You do know that some of my colleagues are, of course, very upset with things that we used to call earmarks, and we all know Pacific Tsunami Warning Center is exactly that, and we also know how critical that center is, along with Alaska, for the whole, not only the Pacific itself, which is about 50% of the Earth's surface, but also, of course, all other areas, including the Caribbean. So is the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center in the budget and protected in terms of funding?
Congresswoman, it is in the budget. What is different this year from last year is that we will not have the benefit of the funds from the WARN Act. Those will expire. And so we will have fewer total dollars for our collective tsunami activities. We have attempted to put in the budget as much as we can to protect the very important work that this program does. We believe that the warnings will continue as they do now. We will have slightly fewer dollars to go out and repair on as frequent a basis as we do now the DART buoys that provide us information about the tsunami traveling across an ocean. Those are not part of the initial warning that is done. Those provide us an ability to update information as the tsunami passes over them. So we will have, the warnings will still be there. The training for communities in terms of the Tsunami Ready programs will continue. And I wish we were in a place where we could keep everything the same, but that's not the situation in this particular case.
Last year, the Oversight Committee permitted me to sit with them as we went over the whole issue regarding the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. The concern was with the DART buoys, because I think at that time something like 9 were not functioning. Mm-hmm. And I want to know if the 9 that were not functioning then, how many are still not functioning today?
Congressman, I don't actually have a figure for how many are functional now. I do know that they go out periodically, and we have to continually send ships out to repair them. It's typically the case that a number of them are out at any one time, but the system was built with some level of redundancy to accommodate for that. So just because we don't have 100% of them functional doesn't mean that the warnings, first of all, the warnings don't depend on those darts. Those dart buoys, again, allow updating as the wave passes.
That's true. And one of the, what my colleagues may not be aware of is that when Hawaii suffered the most number of deaths associated with the tsunami, and that was, of course, off the Aleutian Islands, it's just the way the world and the waves function, that in fact one of the concerns I have is a dart that was located between the Aleutian Islands and Hawaii was one of those that was down. And I believe a dart between Japan and Hawaii was also down. So could you provide for me in writing where and how these darts are functioning? Along that same line, one of the other things that people may not be aware of is the fact that we are also, or we should be monitoring the debris from the tsunami and earthquake in Japan that's making its way somewhere across the Pacific. And it's, of course, a sizable amount of debris. I mean, it's cities that are in the ocean. First of all, I want to know what it is, and I'm running out of time, so I'll just tell you if you could respond. I want to know what is being done about the debris itself and the monitoring across the Pacific. I know we have projections as to whether it's going to hit the West Coast, bounce back and hit Hawaii, whether Hawaii's in the way. The size of that debris, it's not just some little things floating in the Pacific. I mean, it is a whole city, potentially. And in addition to that, I'd like to know how the debris is affecting the migration of fishes, because, you know, that's what we have in the Pacific. We have big-eye tuna, we have fishes that are migratory. So I want to know if by any chance it's affecting them just because of the pattern, and if you could do that for me in writing, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Ms. Hanabusa from Hawaii.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Ash, I don't want you to feel left out. So, you know, you said in your opening statement that you were one of the interested areas was the preservation of course, waterfowl. And then I found it very interesting in reading your resume that you are an avid waterfowl hunter. And can you tell me, because many people think it's counterintuitive or somehow, you know, it just doesn't seem to fit, that someone could want to preserve a waterfowl or duck or whatever it may be, and yet at the same time be an avid hunter of it. So can you tell us how the two actually coexist versus are counterintuitive?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think the entire American system of conservation is really built around the idea and the concept that people take care of things that they love and that they're passionate about. And the American hunter, the American angler have been the backbones of conservation in the United States for over a century, because they recognize the importance of giving back and supporting the conservation of the habitat that is the foundation for the gift that I get every year. When I hunt a waterfowl here in Maryland, those birds are not materializing out of thin air. They're coming from the prairies of the Dakotas and Canada. They're coming from the tundra of Alaska. And so if we don't take care of those places, then I won't be able to enjoy my pastime. And the same is true with recreational fishing.
Now, this is sort of following up what the chairman asked you or asked the panel earlier. You know, we do know that, and you said that there's a backlog of about 251 species to be listed, and that of course funding was necessary for that. However, what about the removal? At some point, if we're doing it correctly, if something is identified as an endangered species, what's the process, if any, that says, all right, we have done our job, and as a result, we can now delist a particular species from an endangered species list? Now, is there a process in place, and how is it done? I mean, do we then list it on the registry and say, hey, these guys are now okay, and therefore they no longer need to be protected? Or what do we do? Or are they more likely that once you're on the list, you will be on the list forever?
When you're on the list, you're on the list for a long time. That's something that's clear. But I think it's always instructive to me to use the hospital example. When we list something under the Endangered Species Act, it's going into the emergency room because we are dealing with a very small population that's at risk. And the immediate job of the Endangered Species Act is to stabilize them, to keep them from going extinct, and then develop a recovery plan, which is our next step. We develop a recovery plan. Then we have to implement that recovery. So when you think of a species, they're coming back from a very difficult long-term sickness. And so we put them into recovery. Recovery is a long process. It's usually decades long. And so, but we have had success delisting species. We delisted the purple coneflower this year. We've delisted the brown pelican, the bald eagle. We're delisting the wolf, the gray wolf in the Great Lakes this year. We have successfully delisted them. We're proposing to delist the northern Rocky Mountain wolf. We're proposing to delist the grizzly bear. So there are processes that are in place. It's built around the development and implementation of a recovery plan.
You know, my time's running out, but can you tell me in writing how long they were on the list before they were able to be delisted? Yes. So like you said, they're going to be on there for a long time. Mm-hmm. I understand that. And finally, Secretary Lutchenko, I'm out of time soon, but what I'd like to ask you to do is, in your statement on page 7, you talk about the fishing industry on a sustainable and profitable path. That's what you're committed to do. Target investments in fisheries, science, observers, and enforcement programs. fish are migratory, especially when you're talking about the Pacific and many of the fishes that NOAA is protecting or looking at, whether we do it by catch share or we do in essence by quotas, especially in the Pacific it's by quotas. So you have more than us as players, and it's not something neat where they say, okay, all the American fishes are in this quadrant by this quadrant. They're all over. So how do you then address those players who are not playing by the same rules? And why is it then that our professional fishermen or who are out there must play by these rules? They're the ones who are enforcing. I mean, I jokingly tell the Coast Guard out in Hawaii, you know, I wonder about funding you because all you're going to do is go out after our fishermen. So, I mean, why and how do you intend to do this in a fair way so that our fishermen are not the ones who are paying the price to sustain, which may not necessarily be a bad thing, but it's not fair. And all I'm looking for is a fairness addressing of this problem, and if you could do that for me in writing because my time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gentlelady yields back. We have Mr. Pallone.